Today I'm going to share with you a recipe for, or my version of a Portuguese Caldo Verde soup. There's a couple of different ways, well, many different ways that people make this soup. But we're going to start from the top and work our way all the way through here. And the first thing it always starts with is with a good stock whenever you're making a good soup. So you can do it with a chicken stock or vegetable stock. You can purchase it if you don't want to take the time to make it, that's fine. Just make sure you find a good, quality one. You can get one in a Tetra box. But I thought, why not show you guys how to make a real quick vegetable stock here. And that's also a good way that you can kind of impart your own flavor onto it, make it unique. And it's also really, really cheap. And you'll see through this, as we do this recipe together, there are a lot of overlapping ingredients. So, as you're chopping all your stuff, you can easily, and getting your mise en place ready, we've talked about that, right? You can easily have everything prepared and ready to go to save time in the kitchen. All right, so we're going to do two different versions. Version number one is going to be completely plant-based, and then version number two is going to have some meat in it with some chorizo sausage. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some chopping on the go here, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to share the mise en place with you, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Chopping done here, but let's start with introducing the mise en place for today. So honestly guys, the key to success in the kitchen is a good and organized mise en place. Means having everything in its place, so that you don't have to stop and get interrupted during the process of cooking. You have all the ingredients on hand, everything is ready to go. First we're going to start with the vegetable stock. So for that guys, I have about 10 peppercorns and a small pinch of mustard seeds. You can go between 2 to 3 bay leaves. You want to be careful with bay leaves, okay? Too much bay leaves in your stock, it's no bueno. It's a really powerful flavor, it takes over, kind of bitterness to it. You don't want to have too much, okay? So always be careful with that. I have one medium-sized to large white onion, thinly sliced, okay? About 4 ribs of celery, thinly sliced, 4 medium carrots, thinly sliced. And then for extra flavor, this is a little chef trick, I like to keep the roots from my celery if I'm going to be making stock, because there's a lot of flavor in here. And same with your onion root, even with a little bit of skin on, that's okay. Also the celery tops, if you have any little leafy bits, I like to put a little bit in there as well. It just helps bring more aromatics to the stock. If you've ever taken a piece of celery, you just kind of rubbed it and you smell the leaves, you really smell the celery. So you're going to get that flavor in your stock. We also have 1 Roma tomato cut into a quarter. Super easy peas. Now you might be asking, why is everything cut thin? You see mirepoix sometimes usually diced and stuff like that for stocks. Well, every stock is different, and some stocks you're going to be cooking longer than others. So if you're doing like a chicken stock or a beef stock where you're going to be simmering for a longer period of time, anywhere from 5 to 8 hours, you want to have things to be larger so that they don't break down super quick. And also because the larger, there's going to be time for the flavor to be drawn out of them, okay? With the vegetable stock, we really only need about 45 minutes to an hour. It's a short stock. If you cook it any longer than that, you're not going to really benefit from it. You're just going to actually leach out some bitterness in the vegetables, and then your stock is going to be it's not going to be as good. So the whole purpose of making everything really thin is to increase the surface area of the vegetable and to help get the maximum amount of flavor out of the volume that you're putting into the pot. So hopefully that makes some sense. Anyways, that's the principle behind that. I've also got some smoked paprika here that we're going to use both in the soup, and I'm going to add a little bit to my veg stock. Okay? There's lots of other ingredients you can add to your veg stock. This is what I'm doing here today. But we're going to put some smoked paprika in here so that we can build up that nice smoky background. It's going to be a good base for our soup. So this is the fun part. So once you learn the basics, you can play with it and you can kind of make it your own. All right, so that's the mise en place for the veg stock. And then to keep these recipes really simple, the first one we're going to do is a plant-based one. And the second one is with a chorizo sausage. So exactly the same amounts of everything, guys. I have a medium dice, 1 cup of carrot, 1 cup of onion, A smaller dice of zucchini, 1 cup, celery 1 cup, peppers about a half a cup, okay? Now you can vary the amounts of the ingredients in these. It's up to you what kind of consistency you're looking for, okay? Also have a can of white kidney beans, each one, some potatoes. I did a combination of what I just had left in the house. I had some sweet potatoes that I wanted to use up, so like why not put those in there, and some white potatoes. I actually diced these up yesterday and held them in some water in a container. All right, now I've got about just over 2 cups here, so I'll just divide it up between the 2 recipes after. Okay, so some potatoes and then kale. Can't have Caldo Verde without kale. Now I just picked this fresh from my garden, guys, so I'm pretty lucky to have that there. It's been I started early inside the house this year, and my basement had a little bit of a plantation going on, and that's why I'm already getting some good kale harvest off my planters. The cool thing here is I've got a bunch of different varietals. I've got your standard kale, just your regular green kale. I've got a bunch of dinosaur kale, and then a good Russian kale in here as well in the bottom. So just different style leaf. So lots of great flavors here, super fresh. Because they're not super large, the leaves, they've got these the stems still on there. I'm not going to bother destemming a lot of these for the soup. I might take some of them off because they're very young. They're not very woody, and they snap, they crunch, very edible, totally good for you, not going to hurt the soup, so I'm going to leave it like that. Anyways, this is how you set up your mise en place. The chorizo I was able to get was, I didn't get the Portuguese style. This is a mild Spanish chorizo, and it's already cooked. So the advantage to this one is that it's not going to render a ton of fat and make our soup really, really fatty. If you were going to be doing this soup with a raw chorizo, I would recommend that you par cook that chorizo, remove some of that fat so that you don't have so much of it in your soup. Don't throw that fat out though. Make sure you save it. You can use that actually in a little bit of the saute process. When you're sweating out your vegetables during that process. Yeah, very, very tasty stuff. Okay, all right, well, I'm gonna get set up on the stove here, what we need to do our vegetable stock, and I'll be right back. Now, getting it started. Super easy peas, guys. Let's turn on our burner to like a medium heat, medium to medium high. Now, one of the main principles when you're making a vegetable stock is you don't want to scorch the vegetables. We're actually trying not to get any color. There are a lot of techniques you can do for this, okay? When we're sweating it out, we're going to add just a tiny bit of oil, just a little bit of olive oil here, not very much. We don't want to have this excess grease, bubbling to the top of our soup. So if you over oil, put too much oil in your pan, it's going to show up in your stock, and your stock will look greasy on the top. So minimal oil is key. This is just going to help coat the bottom of the pot slightly, so that we can start the sweating process with the vegetables. Then we're going to gently steam it. Okay. So once that's on there, give it about a minute, just to kind of gently heat up. Doesn't have to be piping hot. We're not looking to have that instant sizzle or caramelization action when you add your ingredients to the pan. So get your onions in there. Start with all the hearty stuff first. Onions. And your carrots and your celery. I even have some of the carrot root on there. That's okay. Extra flavor on there. It's all washed and scrubbed though. You want to make sure you wash all your vegetables before you start any exercise, guys. They do grow in the dirt, so unless you want some sand in your stock, I advise that you wash, okay? Also going to put in my hearty root ends, tops. I'm going to save the tomatoes for a second here. They're going to go in a little bit closer to the end. Hard spices. So we're going to get them toasting in the pan as well. And what that's going to do is going to help bring out those aromas from the pepper and the mustard seed. Just going to turn up my heat slightly. Spread it out. And what we're looking for is for the pan to come to a gentle, you should be able to hear like this gentle Sweat and simmer, here it comes. Now remember, important that we don't get any color on this. If you brown them, that's okay. Just know that you might get some bitter notes if it gets too dark. You know, if you slightly burn any of the vegetables, that bitterness will leach out into your stock and affect the overall all flavor. Also, if your goal is to get a really, really clear stock, then no color is the best way to go, because the more color you add to the vegetables, that will actually transition into the stock, so you'll have a darker stock, right? Now this is really the only time that I'm going to tell you to ever stir your stock. Okay, one of the other golden rules of stock making is to not disturb it and not stir it. That's after we've added our liquid. But right now I'm just looking to get a nice even saute, sweat on these veggies. Keeping them moving around so they don't, they don't burn or get that extra color that we're trying to avoid. I can actually smell some of the pepper now, the peppercorns. Now I'm not putting garlic in this stock, but you could if you like garlic. I mean, just smash a clove of garlic, one, and put it in there. Okay. In fact, let's add one. Solely for the purpose of demonstration. I'm not even going to bother taking it out of its skin. All I'm going to do is just take this out of a chef's knife and just gently press it, crack it open, and it can go in there just like that, okay? So checking the bottom of my pot, see, no browning, no sticking yet. Do this for about anywhere from like 3 to about 5 minutes. And then what you can do to avoid any browning and cook the vegetables through, this is also very important. If you were just to put everything in here raw and then just cover it with water and turn it on and let it go, I guess you could do that, but people don't understand the principle. The principle is that these vegetables will have a very, very overpowering amount of like bitterness, and almost like that raw flavor of onion and everything will transfer to your stock, and it's not what you're looking for. You want to start to gently cook it out, make them sweet, bring out the natural sugars so that we can extract those flavors. If you skip this process, you'll have something like a stock, but it won't be quite the same. Okay. Now you can see I'm starting to get some translucent bits here on the celery. The onion's getting there. I really want to watch the heat now. I'm going to turn it down to almost low. I'm going to grab a lid if you have a lid for your pot, unless you have another method that you can cover it. Another thing you can do is take a piece of parchment paper, cut it in a circle, and do what was called in French cooking a cartouche. And what it does is gently keeps the steam in of the vegetables and helps steam them through. I'm going to use a lid and just a tiny little splash of water. Just like that. Okay. You know, let that go for about a minute. Let the vegetables steam through. As they're steaming through, just make sure you have everything else ready to go. You've got your Roma tomatoes, bay leaves that we're going to add in the end, and we're going to put a couple of pinches of our smoked paprika in there as well. Check on this. Beautiful. All right. A little bit of water on the bottom. The vegetables are all nice and translucent. Okay. Mostly cooked through. Now, I'm going to add, I like smoked paprika. I'm going to put about 2 teaspoons, in there. A little bit goes a long way. All right. Tomatoes in there. Bay leaf. I can really smell that smoked paprika now. Add the water. As a general rule, when you're making stock, you want to have enough liquid to cover all the ingredients in there. Everything should be nice and submerged, okay? So that's 1 liter. Let's go for 2. And always start with cold water. Don't start with hot water. I think a lot of people think that, oh, you know, I can speed up this process by using hot water. Well, think about where the hot water is coming from in your tap, like in your household or anywhere that you are. It's coming from a hot water heater. And if you guys have ever looked inside one of those things, there's a lot of calcium buildup and lime and scale in there. And if you don't have a really good filtration system, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be putting that in your food. So that's why I always say just go for the cold water. Okay, I'm just shy of 3 liters, okay? All right, so gently turn up your heat. And what you're going to do is you want to bring it to a boil. This is going to take, now depending on the size of the batch that you're making, you know, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Once that comes up to a boil, you immediately are going to turn it down to a simmer. Okay, one of the other golden rules of stock is you do not want to boil. Okay, if you boil for an extended period of time, what's going to happen is you're going to disturb all the proteins in it. It's going to make it cloudy, and it's not good for flavor extraction. Flavor extraction is all about slow and low in the cooking process. Okay. Now you can also use a lid to help bring it up quickly. Just make sure that you're paying attention, okay? Don't let it boil away on the stove. That's like the number one thing that people do wrong when they're making stock. Once it comes to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, nice and low. Let it go for at least 45 minutes to an hour. Checking on our stock. I wanted to show you guys what the perfect simmer looks like. So I brought the vegetable stock up to a boil, turned it down, and this is what I refer to as a perfect simmer. I'll give you a nice close look here, guys. It's just barely moving, even to the point where if you even have just like a little bit of bubbling, that is what a simmer is. You do not want to have it at a rolling boil. This is going to give you a much nicer stock at the end. If you're looking to get a really clear stock, this is also how you do it. Okay. That's what you're looking for. Just got about another, 10 minutes left on the stock here. So I'm just going to try to fill up some time and get a couple other things ready that we need to get ready for our mise en place. Wanted to show you garlic. If it's already been, like if it's not fully peeled, a quick way to get it out. I just want to mince some garlic for this recipe. So I've got 3 other cloves, and we're going to use a little bit of garlic in each one that we make. So just same method, just kind of a gentle smash like so, and then you can pull the skin back off of it. Sometimes that can be really annoying, and it's one of these reasons why people hate peeling garlic. It's like, oh, I gotta, mess with it, and it's hard to get the skins off. If you're gonna be mincing it or dicing it, I mean, why not just go ahead and smash it? Okay, save some time. Work smarter, not harder. Makes it getting that off quite easy. It smells great. Mind you, you're gonna have a lot of your hands are gonna be smelling like garlic and onions after doing this recipe for sure. All right. Smash them a little bit further. I'm just going to mince that up. By using this technique with my hand on top, never putting my fingers on the board like this, you do this, that's a recipe for disaster. On top like so, and rock the knife back and forth. Nice and fine. Set that aside. So my first tray for the plant-based one, I took half those potatoes that I had, so about just over a cup, mixed sweet potato and a yellow potato that I had stored in water, small dice. We're gonna add some garlic to that. I also took the 2 cans of beans and emptied them out. Rinse them with cold water, guys. You want to get some of that the bean juices that are in the can. You want to kind of get rid of that. It's not bad for you. It won't hurt you, and in some recipes, it's actually a nice addition to give some flavor and some extra salt. For this one though, I don't want to cloud up my soup with that protein in there. When you have a tendency, if you use that protein and you cook it, it can make it really cloudy. I'm looking to try to keep this as a little bit more of a clearer broth, okay? Rinse that, set them aside, let them drain, and we'll use half for the plant-based and half for the other, the chorizo. I'm gonna take my kale, it's been washed. And we're just going to chiffonade this. Bunch it together, not looking for any specific consistency here. Size, it's not that important. We just want to go nice and thin. Little bits here, and I'm keeping these stems in here too, okay? Keeping your fingers tucked in, claw position. This is a good way to practice with the, learning the motion of your chef's knife, the slicing action all the way through. Keep those digits away so you're not losing them. Now, some of these recipes that you'll find online with Caldo Verde, they'll actually do a puree. So they'll put the potato, garlic, the kale in the stock, puree it until you get this really consistent kind of green, bright green color to it. There's so many variations of this recipe, guys. The one that we're going to do today, we're just going to add in some of this fresh kale right at the end. Run your knife through it a couple times, just coarsely chop it, and then set that aside for later. And then lastly, the chorizo. Cut into this. Now, depending on the one that you buy, you always want to check and make sure that there's no heavy casing on them, especially if they're pre-cooked. If it's something that needs to be peeled off in advance, because yeah, see, this one does, guys, a little bit there. Oh no, that's okay. No, my bad. But there are some different casings that they do use that you might need to peel off. You definitely don't want to eat them. They're just chewy and no good. Now, dice the chorizo however you'd like in the soup. If you want it to be a little bit bigger, you could just do it in slices, like so. Or you can make it a little bit smaller if you want to cut them in half. But this part is totally up to you guys, okay? I'm gonna go with some nice rounds. Couple little end pieces here, don't tell my wife. The reason why I have a tendency to lean towards the plant-based food is I have a cholesterol issue. And that's probably because of all my years spent in the kitchen next to my nemesis, bacon. I just love bacon. I can't even imagine to try to calculate the amount of bacon that I've eaten throughout my career. Different kitchens that I've worked where it's something that's just always readily available and usually par cooked, and you walk by and it's just a quick snack. Can't help yourself. Or I can't help myself anyways. And, you know, although I do like to believe that I lead a pretty healthy lifestyle, balanced with exercise and good intake of fiber, sometimes your genetics just deal you a different set of cards. So by eating mostly plant-based, guys, this is how I control my my cholesterol and keep myself off of you know, statin drugs to help control that. And so far it's been pretty effective. All right, so we got the chorizo ready to rock. Gonna bring this over here so you can see. We're gonna strain it out. Before you strain it, you want to make sure that you've tasted it. You know, make sure that it's been on there long enough. Like I said, 45 minutes to an hour is really all that you need for a nice vegetable stock. It's pretty good. I can some essence of that smoked paprika in there and all the vegetables. Carefully strain it. You through like a wire mesh strainer, a cheesecloth if you want to go even further. If you use cheesecloth on top of the strainer, you're going to get more particles out in a clearer stock as a result. I've only got room for about 2 liters in there. Looks like we're going to get at the end of this, guys, after evaporation, around 2.5, just short of 3 liters. That's the other thing too. If you boil your stocks, everything will just evaporate away, and you'll be left with not enough volume to do what you're trying to do. Okay, so we want to try to avoid that. I'm just going to move this off to the side, and we're going to move on to soup making. So a medium-sized pot. We'll start first. We'll do our completely plant-based version. All right, guys. So you're gonna grab your mise en place with all your vegetables. Get your heat onto a nice medium, like a medium-high heat. Preheat your pot. I'm gonna add just a titch of olive oil, not too much, okay? Just a little bit to help with our saute of our vegetables. Make sure you have a wooden spoon handy, or a spatula or something else, you know, for stirring. Once your pot gets up to temperature, you're looking for just like a little bit of a sizzle. You can test that. There's a couple ways you can do that. You can put a little splash of water in there, you know, preferably if there's no oil in the pan, but you can just start by putting in a little piece, you know, of vegetable and wait for that to actually start to sizzle a little bit. There we go. We're going to keep there. I'm going to start with the hearty vegetables first, so our onions. And these are the items that take the longest to cook, okay? Which is most of the ingredients on this tray, right? The carrots, the celery, the onion. You can get it with putting those in. And of course our potato, okay? So everything gets in there. Give it a little stir. I like to add salt as I'm going. It's very important to use kosher salt, guys. This is the reason why chefs use kosher salt, and you should use it in your cooking. It's a finer crystal. It dissolves faster. If you're using like your regular table salt or iodized salt, it's super dense and really small. And what that means is that there's actually way more salt in a smaller space, and it doesn't dissolve as quickly. So it can really fool you when you're trying to season things on the go. by that I mean you can go and you can add some, and you'll taste it, within like a minute, and you'll be like, oh, okay, that actually seems like it needs more salt, and then you go and you put more in, and then what happens is over the course of the next 3 to 4 minutes, the salt dissolved more, and it's actually over salted. So for control of using salt, kosher salt is the way to go. Put a little bit of pinch of cracked pepper in here. And I'm gonna bulk up on the smoked paprika in this dish. It's one of my favorite spices. Like another 2 teaspoons or so. Give that a stir. And then coat all the spice on there. Watch your heat, you don't want to burn it, guys. Now after about 2 minutes or so, go ahead and add some of that garlic. Now the reason why I didn't add the garlic in the beginning is because with the heat and over time, I don't want to burn the garlic. I don't want the garlic to become bitter. So I'm going to add it now. About half of that garlic that we minced up earlier. Stir that up a little more. Now at this point you should be starting to smell the garlic. I'm smelling garlic, smoked paprika. If you don't have smoked paprika, that's okay. Go ahead and use just a regular paprika. Now this soup that we're making today, my version is kind of a chunky version of Caldo Verde. Now as I was saying before, there's many different renditions of this recipe that you're going to find out there on the internet. I'm sure there's lots of Portuguese grandmas out there with fantastic methods and techniques. This is just my quick chef's take on it. Now once you've got some translucentness there on the vegetables that are partially cooked through, flavors are blended. You don't want to spend too much time on the saute process. That's where you're going to get burning, and we don't want to do that. We can cook out everything with the stock through the remainder of the process. And we can actually turn up our heat a little bit. Now I am leaving out the beans, the zucchini, and the peppers at this point because they don't take quite as long to cook. That's why we want to give all the other stuff a head start. It's all about timing. Also too, when you're considering the size that you dice things. I mean, for a soup, as a general rule, you want to try to keep things to the size that they can fit on a spoon when you're eating it. That's a pretty good rule. And if you're wondering, why are chefs always like, oh, okay, try to keep things a consistent size? It's not just an aesthetic thing. It's also, it's a scientific principle in that if everything is roughly the same size, you're going to hopefully cook at a more even, cook more evenly, and everything will finish at the same time. If you have a really large carrot versus a small carrot, and you put them in the pot, they're going to cook completely different rates, right? So after about 5 minutes of saute, go ahead and add your zucchini, squash, whatever else you have. You make this recipe your own. The peppers, get them going in there. The beans I'm going to add lastly. They're fully cooked, and if you put them in early in the process of cooking the soup, you're just going to cook them out to the point where they just get super mushy. If you're using a dried bean, yeah, you could go ahead and put them early in the process and cook them out slowly. But dried beans also take a really long time to cook, especially if you're not using an Instapot. Okay, now I'm going to add my stock. Go for about 1.5 liters. Oh, a little bit of a spill there. It's all right. Give it a good couple of stirs. You just want to bring that soup up to a boil and then back down to a simmer, okay? Just like we did with the stock. Exact same deal, all right? So I'm gonna actually set this one on the back burner. Just out of the way there. Grab another pot and we're gonna continue on with our meat lovers one. Now you don't need a pot this large, I'm just using this one because it's what I have available at the moment. Same process, okay? Only this time, we're going to be sauteing the meat in there as well. Preheat your pot. Just a little bit, even less oil on this one, guys. Also depending on the chorizo that you're using and the fat content, that might affect this decision. But I am going to start with the chorizo in the pot first. Because even though this is pre-cooked, it will most likely render out a little extra fat, and then we can use that fat to season the vegetables and the rest of the ingredients that we're adding to the pot. Now chorizo, in true Portuguese style chorizo, it's quite the process. I've actually been fortunate enough to have a couple of friends that make fresh sausages on a yearly basis. It's a grand event. And it's a 2-day event, so lots of fun. You know, we get a little bit of there's maybe a couple of drinks involved, and it's usually like an overnight stay. A friend of mine has a really large smoker that they put over top of like a almost like a wood drum size type of, or sort of like a steel drum with like this customized wooden crate that goes on top, and it actually fits 200 sausage links at a time. The process is we actually spend the morning taking the pork shoulders and breaking them all down with a knife by hand, because with the Portuguese style chorizo, it's more of like a meat pieces and chunks, not so much of a ground meat. When you get into some of the Spanish stuff, it's more of a ground meat. This one, however, is kind of in between. You can see when you look at it, there's some big pieces of fat, and it's definitely not like no ground, right? You can see all these little colors in between, and that's from the meat curing. Because curing was a big process here when you're making the chorizo. So once we have it all the shoulder all broken up and cut, we marinate it in a cure, and that cure is usually made out of a whole ton of garlic, red wine, and pimento peppers, like a good pimento red pepper. And it has to cure, and also lots of salt, and it has to cure for at least 24 hours. And then the next day, we check the seasoning on it, pre-cook some of the pieces of the meat, and then after, once we have the seasoning to where we want it to be, we go ahead and then we form the sausages with the sausage former. And then they get hung and they get smoked as well over the fire, which is what gives it its incredible flavor. Okay, so the chorizo's sauteing a little bit there. I'm going to go ahead the same process, add in my carrots, onions, celery, hearty vegetables, right, first, guys? Something's cooking on me here. There we go. Now this pot's a little bit larger, so I have some more surface area. This will be a little bit faster on this one. Add a little salt, pepper, and some more smoked paprika. After, once again, after about 5 minutes or so, go ahead and add your zucchinis, peppers, oh, what a great smell. Get some garlic in there, the rest of that chopped garlic. Excellent, saute that out. Off the side here, I'm just going to strain out the rest of that stock. I have room in my container now. Now, because I'm making a plant-based soup as well, I better make sure I have a separate spoon. I don't want to go putting my meat spoon in my vegan soup. The plant-based soup is now at a nice simmer. Add the stock to our chorizo soup, the remainder of it. And same thing, bring that up to a simmer. Now you're probably going to want to go ahead and simmer these guys for about, at least 15 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes. Simmer should look like this. I'll show you the pot at the back. Okay. After which we are going to season them and then finish them. So I'll be back in 15 minutes. Alright, back guys. The soups have been simmering for 15 minutes. All the vegetables are nice and cooked all the way through it. I did a little bit of tasting in advance. Now we're going to discuss finishing, seasoning, and plating. Okay? We're going to start with the plant-based Caldo Verde that we're making here. Oh, and I also want to back up and apologize. I did forget to add the potatoes in the last segment to the chorizo pot. Don't worry, it was easy to fix. I literally just sauteed up those potatoes a little bit in a pan, added them. They're in there, so please, if you're following along, don't forget to add those potatoes, okay? Yeah, here we go. This is our plant-based. I'm gonna give a little bit more light in here. See that? You want to make sure all the potatoes are cooked through, right? Taste everything. That's the first thing that you're going to do when you season. See what does it need? And this is where you make the adjustments. Very good. Not bad on the salt. Just a little bit more pinch of salt. Another pinch of pepper. Now, typically everybody thinks when they think of seasoning, they always think, oh, salt and pepper. They forget the third element, which is acid. right? We want to use something acidic to help balance those things. So today I'm going to use lemon juice. It could be just a little splash of vinegar. Now what this does is it actually helps accentuate and balance the flavors of what's in the dish, and helps accentuate the salt. Quite often you'll find when you add acid to a dish, with that little bit of sourness on the tongue will open up your taste buds and allow you to taste more of the salt, which is great in a lot of reasons, because it can actually help you use less salt. And that's another great thing about making your own stocks, guys. You will not have to worry so much about the sodium content if that's a thing for you. It's nice to be able to control how much sodium is in your stock. When you're using store-bought stocks, quite often they have quite a bit of sodium in them. So I'm just going to squeeze this in my hand and use it as a quick sieve to keep the seeds out, because we don't want to put the seeds in the soup. Pinch of lemon. Smell that nice and fresh. Give it a stir, and then go back to tasting that. Always clean your tasting spoon in between. Not everybody wants to share, right? Oh, that's beautiful. So, nice balance of lemon, salt, pepper, all the flavors are in there. Now you're probably wondering, Chef, where's the beans? Now we're gonna go ahead and plate a plant-based one here for you, okay? So grab your bowl. My beans off the side. I remember I told you these are fully cooked, so don't be concerned about. They just need to be heated through. If the soup is super hot, you can go ahead and add these to the pot and the kale to the pot and serve it as you will. But if you're looking for a more aesthetic look to it, and you also don't want to overcook the kale, because you're gonna get rid of a lot of the nutrients and stuff. I like to put my kale in the bowl raw. Okay. And my beans are about room temperature, so I'm just going to put a good handful, of beans into there. This is more or less the protein for the plant-based soup. And then finish. Just ladle in your hot soup. And try to get a good balance of broth to vegetables and heartiness. There you go. Just give it like a little stir in the bowl. If you want to get a little bit more greenery on top, that kale in there. Just think about green vegetables. The more that you cook them, the more nutrients you leach out of them. Okay, so the less you cook them, the better the benefit is for you. Okay, I'm going to move on to our chorizo one. Exact same process, guys. This bigger pot, a little bit harder to see, but smells fantastic. All I'm getting is that real nice smokiness from the chorizo. Go ahead and give her a taste. Yeah, it needs a little bit more salt. Now remember, you can always add salt, but you can't take away. It's much more difficult if you over-season something to try to fix it than if it needs more, right? Like, it sometimes just turns to a comedy of errors. Like, oh, too much salt. What do? You usually add more volume, so you'll add more stock, or sometimes some water to try to counteract that. And depending on how much you've actually over-seasoned it, it can just turn into a regular comedy of errors that you don't want to be a part of. So, seasoning takes a lot of practice and a lot of skill. And the best rule is just a little bit at a time, taste as you go, and then decide from there, okay? But you can't take away. Pepper. Some fresh lemon that we talked about. That acid component. give it a stir and we'll give it another taste. Try to allow for at least 45 seconds to a minute in between adding salt after you've stirred. You know, it does take a little bit of time for it to dissolve, so you want to make sure you're getting a good a good taste on it, so that it's fully dissolved and it's not tricking you. But like I said, kosher salt is the best for this. It does dissolve the fastest, and this is why we use it. It's required just a tiny bit more salt. Excellent. All right, well, let's plate this guy up. Same method. Kale in the bowl. Add those beans in there if you want them to. Develop that protein and that fiber in the dish. And then add our soup. Should be able to see some nice big pieces of chorizo. And once again, look for that balance of broth to heartiness. You don't want too much veg. You don't want it to be a stew. If it's too hearty, it's not really a soup anymore. Excellent. There you have it, guys. Caldo Verde Soup. 2 ways. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon.